Unity matters.
Hello, thank you for joining us at the hmTV, our podcast studio of the Holocaust Memorial Tolerance Center. I'm the executive director here, Bali Lerner, and we're really excited to welcome you to Unmasked, Unfiltered, and Unapologetic, my podcast series. And I'm extremely excited to welcome my guests here today. We have CJ Hutter and Tanner, I'm going to pronounce it probably, Brandimarte.
Brandimarte, yes.
Brandimarte. All right, Brandimarte, Tanner Brandimarte, when they are joining us from the Suffolk County PBA, and they have their own podcast studio, which is I don't think I've ever actually had any guests here that have their own podcast. So this is I feel like you should be interviewing me rather than me interviewing you.
It is a little interesting when the roles are reversed, right? Because now you're interviewing us, and we're used to doing the interviewing ourselves. Too.
Right. Even as we were just settling down, I see you guys are like looking at each other, like, wait, we're sitting next to each other. Like it's a little weird. Yep. But all seriousness, thank you so much for joining us. We're so happy and honored that you're here.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. We appreciate it.
And I guess I have to give a little shout out to Jordan Ziegler. Jordan is our upcoming golf outing honoree, co-honoree. Him and Roger Blumenkrantz are honorees for upcoming golf outing. And he introduced us.
Yep.
And this is what it's all about. Like here at hmTC, we're all about building relationships and connections. And as we were speaking, we were sharing how here at hmTC, basically every Suffolk and Nassau County police cadet comes in through training here.
Yep.
So it was great that you were here, and I really thank you for making this day work, because this is one of the days where our Suffolk cadets are actually here.
Yeah, which is great too. So I remember coming here as a police recruit, and it was one of those memorable experiences, right? Because it's exciting to be able to get outside of the walls of the police academy, right? Do something different, learn something new, get a little fresh air, walk some of the grounds here too. And it just so happened that after we were introduced by Jordan, we were doing a little research on the museum, and there's actually a picture of me from 11 years ago when I came here as a recruit on your website.
Which is so wild, because we have so many photos. I mean, the cadets are here every year, constantly, because they come in small groups, right, to maximize the effect. So they come here in small groups. We have thousands, literally thousands of photos. So the fact that the one on the website is the one with you on it is just wild.
I know, it's crazy. Tanner was the one that actually found it when he was doing some research.
Because you were in the background, and it wasn't that noticeable at first. And I was like, oh, I know that guy. He's on the podcast, man, CJ.
That's really so wild. So it was meant to be.
Yep.
There's a Yiddish word, it's besheret, and it's basically when something is meant to be. So there's a reason we haven't updated that photo. It's meant to be that you would be here, and you as well, Tanner. So I'm just curious. Now, let's start at the beginning. So you were both with Suffolk County PD.
Yep.
And for how many years were you?
Yeah, so everybody on the PBA board is active police officers. I started my career in New York City in 2007, and then I was lucky enough to come out to Suffolk County in 2015. So altogether, I'm in my 20th year of policing, but I guess I'm in my 11th in Suffolk County.
Oh, so you're everyone that's on the PBA is actually an active.
We're we are police officers. Yep, we're just elected to our positions by the other police officers in the county to fill the union roles.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know if I'm getting the full, if I don't have the mic in my face.
Yeah.
So I started in the city as well as CJ. I started in 2016. I moved over to Suffolk in 2017. Then I went to the 2nd Precinct in 2018 after graduating the academy. And I've been a delegate at least since 2020 and been on the board for the last couple of years as a sergeant at arms. And I work in emergency management. So I'm still active. I'm not a full release member on the board. So it's nice that I go out for a little bit. And when we have certain big events in the county, I have to go work. So.
Well, it's kind of the best of both worlds, I guess, because
I like it. I like still going out there, and you feel like you're part of the team that you're with, and they're great to me. The team that I have a great boss over there, Kevin Muller. He's great. I have a great working relationship with the other people in my unit, so it really is great. And I love the 2nd Precinct. I love being there, even when I was on the board. So it's a great best of both worlds, and I love what I do for the board as well.
So I guess let me first say, obviously, thank you for being here today, but thank you for your service. And personally, I am so grateful and honored for every police officer that, takes on this incredible role. And it's truly, you are such public servants. And I personally, and I know everyone here at the center, we do not take any of it for granted. We are so grateful for all that you do and the men and women, that like you, and all that you give to keep us safe. And we don't take it lightly. And I think living on Long Island, sometimes some people do take it for granted a little bit because, knock on wood, thank God, like we're safe because of the great job that you guys do. And I think sometimes people might take it for granted. It's one of those things you don't know what you have until you need to, right? Until something goes wrong, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, thank God they're here. But we are very, very grateful, and we understand the importance of what you do. And that's why our cadet program is so important to us. And we cherish the time that they come here. We know we only have a little bit of time, and we're very, very grateful that we have the opportunity to kind of give a slightly different viewpoint, with our training than, in the regular training that goes through. We're just enhancing it. So thank you for your service. And I guess if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about the PBA in general, because I think there's assumptions that everybody just kind of knows what the PBA does. And after watching a lot of your podcasts, I've kind of really understand what a support system you are. So if you can just share with our listeners.
Yeah, sure. So, the PBA, we're the labor union that represents all the police officers here in Suffolk County. But beyond that, we do a lot to help combat some of the mental health issues that our members face after going to hundreds of critical incidents throughout their career. Most civilians, you might experience 2 or 3 critical incidents throughout your lifetime. Our members go through hundreds. So eventually that starts to wear on some people's minds. So we do a lot to help the mental health of our members. One of the things I'm actually most proud of is it's not just about our membership salaries, compensation packages. It's not just that. We also lobby and advocate for law changes to be able to make it easier for our members to do their jobs effectively and combat the criminal elements that are out there in the public. We'll advocate up in Albany to roll back some criminal justice reforms. We'll advocate for changes in laws to make penalties fit the crimes again. Because right now, I feel like a lot of the issues we're facing is some people feel like there's no deterrence to committing crimes. They feel like it's almost like a revolving door. They might get caught doing something and they're out in a couple hours because the penalties just aren't fitting the crimes anymore.
Well, so this podcast series is called Unmasked Unfiltered Unapologetic. Basically, every time I open my mouth, everybody's a little bit nervous of what I'm going to say. So I've really earned that title. But so you're bringing up, and let me know if at any point you don't want to make a comment or feel uncomfortable discussing anything. But I am very concerned about the fact that I feel so much of this illegal behavior has we've become desensitized to it, and it's kind of like, well, there's certain things that you're just okay with, and I don't know if we can pinpoint exactly when it started, but certainly bail reform, certainly there are moments in history, and I think a lot of it is much more New York City than Long Island. But I find it to be really, really frightening because people do feel like, hey, it's no big deal if they get caught and then they're just out, and and there's no level of respect. There's it's missing today. For some people. And I mean, I don't see it here as much on Long Island, but I do worry that, eventually things, we're not completely free from it, right? Eventually things that become normal in one part of the country or of the state could eventually become to feel normal here.
Yeah, I agree. It becomes infectious, right?
Right.
And I think you hit the nail on the head when you mentioned there's a real lack of respect for law enforcement and authority nowadays. We were just on the steps of City Hall recently, and we were advocating for a HALO Act. And the HALO Act would create a law where people would have to maintain a safe distance from any first responder taking action on the street once the first responder told them, we need space, back up. And there's been some criticism from some of these First Amendment right activists, and the First Amendment is the First Amendment for a reason. The First Amendment is very important. But what the HALO Act would do is nothing that would deter the First Amendment. We just want a safe distance for us to be able to operate. We're still recording everything with our body cameras ourselves. We're not preventing you from recording anything that we're doing. We just want it done from a safe distance so that you're not interfering in us trying to effect an arrest when somebody's resisting, or interfering in us doing CPR on an aided subject who might need some sort of life-saving action taken. So it's another prime example of what we're doing actively right now to try to make our communities safer.
Can I piggyback on that real quick? I think that one of the big things that we've seen over the last couple of years, well, you saw New York City police officers get water dumped on them. We saw New York City police officers get snowball ice pushed in their face. That's disrespect. Like you're saying, if people don't respect the law, if they're not willing to respect those enforcing the law and our first responders who are taking care of them as well, do they really respect themselves too? It puts the public, the general public, at risk, because if you don't respect the police officer, you're willing to do anything else to the public.
I think that's so many great points. First of all, I can't believe that anyone is even, I mean, I guess I should believe it because the world seems so upside down today, but that anyone would have any issue with Halo, basically. I mean, I can't even imagine finding a downside in having just enough personal space in order to do your job, right? Which is helping others.
Right.
I mean,
Any
it's just
legitimate
crazy.
journalist wouldn't have an issue with it.
Right.
It's only the agitators that have issue with it because
Like
we're
everything
taking
else.
their tool away from them.
Right, like everything else. And as far as New York City, I remember when I watched, just recently, like the snowballs being thrown at NYPD, and I'm thinking to myself, my God, how far have we fallen? Because, and like you said, if you don't have respect for people that are there to protect you, then what kind of respect are you going to have for your fellow mankind in general? And like you said, for yourself. I didn't even think about that, but that's a great point. So, while we're going down this path, I'm just curious, have you seen any kind of, in a world where we're hearing and seeing a lot of anti-Semitism, and again, once again, I think we do live in a little bit of a bubble here in Nassau and Suffolk County, and we're very, very fortunate. But it doesn't mean that we're free from those incidents because obviously it's out there. And have you experienced, has the Suffolk County PD experienced?
Yeah, certainly. There's been plenty of times when I was still out on the road where I would respond to graffiti incidents where there's swastikas being graffitied on fences, or there's vandalism being done to a synagogue or a temple or any house of worship, right? So there's definitely been a lot of examples of anti-Semitism and people just the general hatred that really starts to deteriorate a society.
I've seen I worked a lot in Dix Hills in the beginning of my career, and there's a lot of, there's a big Jewish community over there. There's a lot of temples. So we would get calls where they would get threats to the temple or whatnot, or the community, and they would have us come and check on the temple and those going there. We had patrol checks over there at a lot of temples. They're very sensitive locations, especially nowadays, where people are willing to show up there and do crazy things because maybe they don't agree with your religion, which again, I think that you should have the right to appreciate your religion in a safe environment. But yeah, I've definitely responded there, and it's sad that we have to make sure that those places are safe, because you should have that privacy and that safety. You should feel safe when you go to any church or temple or whatever your religion may be. It doesn't matter whether I agree, whether I am the same religion or not. You should have that safety and feel safe in worshiping wherever you go.
I agree.
Yeah, just to piggyback on Tanner's point real quick, he mentions the patrol checks. Even if things are happening elsewhere in the world, excuse me, New York City or Los Angeles, if there's some sort of terror incident or active shooter incident, Suffolk County, one of the things I'm proud of is we take proactive steps to prevent that kind of stuff from happening here, from there being a copycat. So we'll implement patrol checks at all the houses of worship. We'll do things proactively to make sure that the people in Suffolk County that are worshiping can feel safe while they're doing it.
I remember years and years ago when I would visit in Europe, and, we would go see old churches. I have this fixation. My family's like, okay, Mom, enough with the churches. We like it, but how many can we see in one day? But we would visit old churches, and we would always look for like the oldest, maybe, Jewish area, as well, in whatever country we would be visiting. And it always struck me that, the churches really didn't have much as far as security, and they had so many people coming in and out. And then the synagogues would always pretty much have security. And this was years ago. And today, here in the U.S., I mean, this is the norm. I was actually in the city with a friend of mine the other day, and there was huge, heavy NYPD presence. So we were like, oh, I wonder if someone, big or interesting is visiting. So we asked one of the officers, what was happening in the area. And he just turned and said, oh, there's a Jewish event. And, fair enough, like that explains it. But I stopped for a moment and I said to my friend, the fact that it's become so normalized, the hatred, right, that the officer responding and saying, oh, it's a Jewish event, is the proper answer, because that just kind of explains it to people. Oh,
Right.
Of course they need NYPD protection.
Right. You already know what that kind of means in the background.
Right. So it wasn't, I said the fact that he gave a response that was just so normal. Sometimes it seems like the most basic thing, but think about it. Now that means that we've become so accustomed as a society that we would need that kind of protection. And we do, and we're very grateful that we have it at all of our events. So thank you for that. I guess I want to switch switch gears a little, because you guys have your own podcast series. I wanted to hear a little bit about it. And I love that you met Bernie, who's here today, who started this podcast studio, and he's incredible. A lot of time goes into this. So if you can tell us a little bit about your podcast studio, did you guys start it? A little history about it, and
Yeah, so we had been talking about starting a PBA podcast for a couple of years. And then Lou Savello, the president of the PBA, approached Tanner and I and said, hey, this is a project that we've always kind of talked about, but can you guys kind of take the ball and run with it? Can you start a PBA podcast? And we both right away dove in head first, and we said, yes, this is a great opportunity, especially the way mainstream media portrays police officers after some of the critical incidents that have occurred throughout the country. There's a very skewed reporting style where they really harp on some of the negative stuff that happens because it sells. That's what makes money, right? And they very often ignore 99% of the work that police are doing every day that's keeping people safe and saving lives, fighting crime, doing the things that we're supposed to be doing. A lot of it gets ignored by the mainstream media. So being able to do our podcast, tell our stories, get some of the good work out there highlighted, I think it's been a pleasure and a great way for us to kind of combat that narrative a little bit.
I'll just add on to what CJ said. I think, it was really something that we were talking about, like you said. I think that CJ really, Lou asked us both to do it, and it started off being we were going to do it like once a month and then once every other week. And I think it was really CJ's opinion that we should do it every weekly, that we should have it weekly. And I think that was the best decision we made, and it's really helped us grow and get our messages out there. I also have to give a shout out to our producer of the podcast, Anthony Barone Media Solutions. They do a great job putting everything together, because we're cops. We don't really, we weren't really in the business of creating and manufacturing a podcast, although we've learned a lot by doing it. But he does a tremendous job of putting everything together and getting it to us so that we can get our message out there. And I think it's been really a joy to work with the two of them, with CJ in particular. And I think he does a great job of really controlling the conversation, of garnering where it's going to go, and touching the topics that are most important to us and our members,
right,
and policing in general.
It's interesting. I think you're right, because that's kind of how, when Bernie started the studio here, we said, how do we reach more people, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that you touch a very important point. Like, we have police officers here at hmTC, and one of the things that I recently, a few months back, I had spoken to him about, I said, unfortunately, when I was growing up, you grew up that, like, if you need help, if you ever are in a situation where you need someone, look for a police officer. That's how I was raised, and so that was embedded in my brain. My mother used to tell me that. My teachers used to say that. That was always in our brain. Now, because of what the media, again, it's what sells, right? It's unfortunately, hate sells, and so they stick with this. So now, unfortunately, I feel the kids are not growing up with that. So, like I had said to the officers here, I said, hey, when the kids come in, when they come off the bus, just like a fist bump or a high five as they come in, let them let them, because they tend to try and want to like stay away and not bother people, not scare them off. I'm like, no, it's quite the opposite. I think they need to see that you're a human and that you're there for them. And a little fist bump on the way in can make a huge difference on how a kid looks at them going forward.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring up that point, because we have a great community relations bureau in Suffolk County. They do a great job of getting out to the schools, getting out to the Little League fields, interacting with the youth of our community. And it's important for children and young adults to have those positive interactions with police officers.
Absolutely.
And not their first time being, getting pulled over for running a red light when they're a new driver, right? You want some of those positive interactions early on in life too. And further to your point, growing up, cops, teachers, firemen, nurses, those were the heroes in our communities, right? All the negative media attention that has been going on here in America has led to so many less kids growing up wanting to be cops now. So if you look at recruitment issues throughout the country, like our last test, we had a 67% drop in applicants from our peaks about 20 years ago. So that's a big applicant pool to be down. And in Suffolk County, we haven't lowered our hiring standards yet. So everybody that's getting hired is still qualified to be police officers. They're passing the same background checks and fulfilling the same requirements as the guys and girls were 20 years ago. But in some jurisdictions around the country, they're lowering their hiring standards just to be able to put bodies in their academy to fill police cars.
Well, I know when I speak to the cadets that are here, both Nassau and Suffolk cadets, and they come here, they are so grateful for being here on Long Island, because they know that they are so excited about the opportunities that they have, and they understand the important job that they have. And I don't know if you remember when you went through the program, but the conversations that because the beauty of what I get to do is, unfortunately, I have to deal day to day with all the stuff. Some you don't necessarily, not the fun stuff, but the moments where the conversations. So they tour and they have conversations, and they tour again, and then they have open discussion. And some of that happens right outside of my office in one of the conference rooms. So a lot of times I'll listen in. And it's interesting because we show, like on our tour, there's one photo of an SS officer and a police officer and a dog walking side by side. And that's a critical moment that it gets discussed a lot with the cadets, because what shifted at some point, on the rise of Adolf Hitler, when the police who were there to be always the good guys, all of a sudden now were side by side with the SS officers. And purposely, the SS officers wanted to show that, we're now the enforcers, right? And we're working together. And so the conversations that come out of that, and that's we don't have that much space here. So any photo that we have, it's there for a reason. And it's a huge, actually, Bernie fixed it up. We redid it recently. It's a huge, floor ceiling photo, because it's so impactful and so important. And because that police are such an important part of our society, and law and order is such an important part of our society. So I hope we're doing our little share to help. And we're so grateful that you guys are here. And I'm excited for when we're done here for you guys to come upstairs and to see the cadets and remember back to when you were through this program. But I'm curious, thinking back to, I'm going to go in reverse again, and thinking back, you're back here at the Holocaust Museum. It's been a little bit of a while. Do you have any suggestions, any words of wisdom for the cadets that are starting off and, at the beginning of their career? Because it is a different world than when you guys started.
Yeah, it's certainly a different world. And I think one of the, we do get to meet our recruits in the academy about a week after they get hired. So we get to give them some pointers and pieces of advice early on in their careers. We get to spend time with them again the week of graduation. We get to spend a full 8 hours with them that day too. And then throughout their careers, we spend time with them. But on this particular day, when you come to visit the museum, I remember for me coming through, it was a little bit of an eye-opener. And I had already had police experience in New York City, but it's a reminder that no matter how you're brought up, what your religion is, what your beliefs are, what your culture is, you might be policing in a neighborhood that's heavily concentrated in a different religion, a different culture. And you just have to be aware of that and accepting of the fact that different cultures may have different ideals or different structures. And sometimes you have to be careful not to offend people innocently enough. Just be accepting of what their differences are.
That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
That was, I have to go back and see who your docents were that day because they'll be happy that you gave that answer.
I wonder why you were in that picture.
There we go.
I'll just say, I agree exactly with what CJ said. I feel like I learned a lot more about culture after becoming a cop because you're so you live your life in maybe a bubble and you live up in the environment that you grow up in. So I think that reaching out, when I became a cop, I worked in different neighborhoods, maybe with people, around people that I didn't realize their culture was as different as mine. I'd also like to thank you guys because I think that it's important to have places like this that share history. I think that, especially today where everybody's online, everybody's on social media, you're watching a million videos in the span of a day, and you're seeing all this culture today, but how much of the history do we really see? And I think it's important that our recruits and cadets see all this history and see the importance of it. History exists for a reason. And I think that they learn a lot by coming to this museum when they do. So thank you for sharing that experience with us.
Thank you, Tanner. Thank you, CJ. So it's funny. I want to give a little plug here to your podcast. It's called On Patrol. And just a warning to our listeners, because every time I've played it here like a few times, before I've played it mostly at home, but a couple of times while I'm here. And this morning I was about to put it on in my office to listen to another podcast. And I was like, I better lower the volume because it starts off with the siren, right? And I'm like, that's all I need is everyone to start panicking.
Our friend Bob is going to criticize us after he hears this because he's been telling me this for the last 2 weeks. He's like, you have to lower the volume on that, and we have to work on that. The
I love it. I love it. I think it's great. It gets me in the mood when I'm listening to it in the car or at home. But here, definitely, although if I do it upstairs now with the cadets here, they might just think I'm getting in theme, But yeah, in the office space, you have to be a little careful. Yeah.
It is.
But so I just maybe share, and you guys could each share maybe your own craziest experience or most interesting or out of the box, something that whether it was a guest that you had or something you even learned about yourself doing this, because again, you guys, you're cops. You didn't sign up to be podcast hosts, and now here you are. Anything you want to share?
Yeah, it's definitely been an interesting experience. So obviously the name of the show is On Patrol with Suffolk County PBA. You could get us on Spotify, iHeart, Pandora, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, the PBA's YouTube channel, and all our social media. So we put it out on plenty of platforms. It's free to subscribe. So you don't have to spend any money, but we get to share our message, our ideas of what's going on out in the world today. We get to have plenty of guests on, ranging from elected officials to community activists to local business owners.
Right.
It's nice for our members to know that they're supported by local businesses and people in the community. They'll talk about various programs they have that they support us, various things that they donate to make sure that the money's going to help police officers do our jobs effectively. We had Lou Tatone on. He's the chairman of the Suffolk County Police Foundation. He's been raising money to help fund a new police academy out east, update our facilities, update all the training that we do. Because a lot of our facilities and training locations haven't been updated in decades. And like anything else, places they start to fall apart eventually.
Yeah.
Right. So you need updates. You need to be able to build new. So Lou Tatone was a great guest to have on to kind of explain that public-private partnership that the Police Foundation has, which ultimately saves tax dollars for the residents of Suffolk County. And even we had Vinny Greco on. Vinny was a very funny guy. He's a local business owner out in the 7th Precinct. But he shared a lot of funny stories about his time with the Mets. He was a clubhouse attendant during the 80s and 90s when the Mets had an
interesting time.
Yes,
Yes,
very interesting cast of characters around that period of time. And Vinny befriended a lot of these people, and he shared some of his funnier and more heartwarming stories about guys like Doc Gooden and Darryl Strawberry, who sometimes get a lot of negative press because of some of the demons they've dealt with in their lives. But Vinny helped share some of their human side. And, these guys were kids that suddenly overnight became millionaires and superstars in the biggest city in the world.
Yep.
So there's a lot of stress that goes on behind the scenes with that. But he helped humanize them, and it was a very interesting conversation today.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm going to have to go back and find that one.
I think it's been a great experience, and Vinny's episode was a great episode. I had a lot of laughs, a lot of fun during that episode. It's been really cool to see different people's perspectives. I think some of my favorite episodes have been Kevin Catalina, our commissioner, incredibly smart person, really the right person for that job. Sheriff Toulon, who is an amazing person, a great elected official as a sheriff of Suffolk County. I think we have the best sheriff in New York State and probably in the country. He's such a great person, and he had shared so much insight into his job, but also his personal life. And I think that it was good for people to hear about that stuff. We just had Tom Galati on the show. He's a new deputy commissioner. He was brought in, another incredibly smart person, and we're happy to have him now in Suffolk County. I have to say, though, my favorite episodes are probably the ones we shoot with Lou, our president. I think Lou is so smart, again, but I think he's just so well articulate. I think I've learned a lot from him, and he's not afraid to speak his mind and his opinion about certain things, and he does that for our members. So it's important that they get the message. We put that message out there, and I think it's important he comes on here and then when he can make time to come on and get whatever point we're trying to make across. And he's the perfect person to do it, like I said. But otherwise, it's been great working with CJ, and like CJ said, I think that people should hopefully follow, like, and subscribe, and really follow us on social media, because we share some clips from the episodes there. If you can't watch the whole thing, maybe you catch a clip that's interesting to you.
Right.
So hopefully we continue to grow. That's the goal.
You know, it's amazing to me because you have speakers on there, and the guests on there that it really goes to, it takes a village, you know, because there's so many speakers. I was like, oh wow, I never even thought about that, you know, and I'm just like amazed by really how many people, and it goes a lot to Suffolk County PD, and for those that are possibly considering a future in it, like, you're really supported truly by a village, because when you see all the guests that you have coming on, these are people, and the PBA is so supportive of each officer, and it's incredible, really, how pretty much every aspect in life there is someone there to help you out and support you through the PBA, which is just incredible. And I think it's a true testament of, you know, a brotherhood and a family. And I think it's fantastic. I'm so glad that you guys have the podcast. And I will say, from a layman's perspective, there's also a lot of information that just an average person can gain from those podcasts too, because it's not necessarily just information that only the officers are gaining from it. Because I've listened to a few of them and I was like, oh, and I've learned, things that I can use myself. So thank you so much for having the podcast. Thank you for your service. I'm excited to hopefully have you guys back here one day, and maybe stay tuned. We're hoping maybe you guys can interview maybe we could work something out. Maybe you could interview some cadets or some of the officers here next time.
All right, awesome. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you
Appreciate
so much.
it.
And thank you for joining us with Unmasked, Unfiltered, and Unapologetic. Until next time.